There were a lot of warning signs, plenty of reasons why getting into business with Donald Trump was never going to end well for them. But if there was one moment where they should have walked away with their dignity intact and kept their distance from Donald Trump forever, it was probably this one.
Andy, you're just being pounded on. You're being out-debated. I just don't want somebody running one of my companies that's going to get beaten up so badly, you're fired. And I just have to do this. I have no choice. Wes, you're fired also.
Andy Litinsky and Wes Moss, contestants on season 2 of The Apprentice. Both were fired by Trump in dramatic boardroom scenes full of melodramatic music and a whole lot of reaction shots. But Andy Litinsky and Wes Moss did not learn their lesson. Years later, after Trump became a twice impeached former president who tried to steal an election, Andy Litinsky and Wes Moss decided to go into business with him. And boy, do they seem to regret it. These two former Apprentice contestants helped Trump build his right-wing Twitter knockoff social media company, Truth Social. But now they are suing Trump, claiming he's essentially trying to cheat them out of their share of that company. I mean, who could have seen that coming? That lawsuit isn't your typical where are they now reality TV story. The lawsuit from those two former Apprentice stars is now getting in the way of Trump's latest attempt to escape accountability. Right now, Trump is on the hook for more than $500 million from his civil fraud and defamation lawsuits. At the same time, Trump is in the middle of a big deal to try and effectively sell that Twitter knockoff for billions of dollars, the company that Andy Litinsky and Wes Moss helped Trump create. A lot of people think Trump could try and use the proceeds from that sale to pay his legal bills. That way, he could avoid having to sell off his precious real estate holdings and get Truth Social's investors to cover the cost of his misdeeds. But now the Washington Post reports that the lawsuit from those two former Apprentice stars is throwing a wrench in the deal. It's delaying Trump's access to those funds, which could be a real problem for Donald Trump, who sure seems these days like he does not have the money to pay the millions and millions in penalties that he owes. Last week, Trump tried to get the courts to delay his $83 million payment in the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit. Today, Carroll's attorney responded to that request for delay, saying he simply asks the court to trust me and offers the court filing equivalent of a paper napkin signed by the least trustworthy of borrowers. Trump is also trying to delay paying his New York civil fraud payment. This week, Trump and his lawyers asked the judge to allow him to pay only $100 million of the $450 million he owes in that case. Yesterday, the judge denied that request. In a 2-line statement, he told Trump's attorneys, "You have failed to explain, much less justify, any basis for delaying the payment." End scene. In the course of that back and forth yesterday, though, we learned about another possible attempt by Trump to avoid paying the piper, and it is a real doozy. In a legal filing yesterday, New York Attorney General Letitia James accused Trump of quietly trying to move his assets to Florida to avoid having them seized by the state of New York. Quoting from the New York Attorney General's office, after the court issued its February 16th order, defendants announced for the first time that various Trump Organization entities operating in New York are allegedly now located in Florida. Two of the companies that were part of that lawsuit, DJT Holdings LLC and DJT Holdings Managing Member LLC, have already been relocated to Florida. Now, as of the year 2023, both of those companies were still located in New York. So did Trump move those companies to Florida after the Attorney General brought a lawsuit against Trump and those companies? I mean, that would be one creative way to get out of paying any penalties in the case. And it sounds like the court was concerned that Trump would do something exactly like that, which is why at the very beginning of this case, the judge here barred Trump from moving his assets out of the state. Now, Donald Trump is doing everything in his power to avoid accountability in his civil and criminal trials. And yes, in some cases it is working. Yesterday, of course, he managed to get the conservative majority on the Supreme Court to delay his case in the D.C. election interference trial well into the future. His Georgia election interference cases have been successfully stalled as well. We don't know what's happening in Mar-a-Lago, but the civil cases against Trump, the ones from the New York Attorney General and from writer E. Jean Carroll, those have been the only cases so far where Trump has really had to face justice. Now he's making these last-ditch efforts to avoid having to pay up. And the question is, will Trump be able to escape accountability here as well? The author of the Daily Beast story that broke a lot of this, Jose Palieri, political investigations reporter for the Daily Beast. Jose, thanks for joining me. If you could, can you explain, like, the indications we have right now and the timing about whether Donald Trump is, in fact, trying to move organizations that are subjects of this fraud trial out of state to avoid having to pay penalties? Can you talk a little bit more about the sort of evidence that is at hand?
Sure. So, I mean, look, like you said, all we know now is that they've had these changes of addresses. And the person who should be first to know would be Barbara Jones, that former federal judge who is the monitor over the company. She's been babysitting the company for over a year now. And this was exactly why she was put in place. I mean, Justice Engoron, who is the trial judge, knew that this kind of thing could happen. That's why a little over a year ago, he ordered this monitor to be put in place so that the Trumps could not move assets out of the state, which was a concern from the beginning. And so with this change of address, we're sort of seeing hints at that. I mean, we knew that Donald Trump feared having to pay this amount of money, and especially when he's going through such a big cash crunch now. Let's remember that the $83 million he has to pay up very quickly to E. Jean Carroll for losing the rape defamation case in January, it's coming due. And this is a really bad storm for him. And so the fact that they've changed these addresses is certainly suspicious. The fact that they only alerted the court in a letter saying, oh, by the way, these addresses are incorrect, that's sort of a backdoor way to get into this. And it's why the AG in New York is calling them out on this. What's interesting is going to be how far this goes, because at this point, Trump's legal team has to answer some serious questions from the judge, and the appellate court isn't going to play this game either. I mean, they already issued a temporary stay so that this can be fought on appeal, but they chose not to hit the pause button on him paying this money. So at this point, he's not in a position where he's supposed to be moving assets. He's actually in the position where he needs to pay up real soon. And so we'll get answers pretty soon. But the fact that they did it this way at this hour after they were told to pay is certainly raising red flags.